NPR, but they
Really?
couldn't march in the.
Well, both groups were removed from the march. Stop and Frisk, a couple of people snuck back in.
Yes.
And we're at the end of the march, and yeah, carrying their whistles, carrying the sign.
Were you gonna speak to this?
No,
issue
not
about
the
the-
one I got a question, I want to ask time, because it's Thursday, there's so much that's going on. My question would be you directly towards you. How many people had they, like, were dealing with this, because you got immigration all over the country, how many people have lawyers that have in other parts of the state? How many of y'all were actually working on this? Because I realize that we got all these things going, but nobody's unifying together. I mean, it's more powerful to unify together and towards moving and changing things. But I don't see nobody reaching out to the allies and saying, well, yo, let's work together. I'll come over there to Jersey, whatever the case. They'll push it a little bit further, you know?
Yeah, so I mean, I think, when we're talking about immigration, it's obviously not just New York, right? It's across the country. And so that's part of the reason why we're connected to a lot of efforts. So we do actually work with people in Jersey, we work with people in California. We kind of are part of a whole network of folks across the country. And I also want to say this, a lot of the focus that we've been talking about today is on the criminal justice system. And I think, honestly, if we're going to be really frank here, people who work on immigration are really decades behind, right? And so for them, working with the criminal justice folks is kind of not where they're at. And I think that's something that we really need to fix, and that's something that we've been pushing for, right? Because if you listen to what immigration advocates have been saying for decades, it's just, don't target us. We're not criminals, right? We're just hard workers, right? And so it kind of leaves open this question of okay, what happens if you actually do have a criminal record, if you have been targeted by the police? And basically the immigration movement has kind of just been too bad, so sad, we can't deal with you right now because we need to try to work for the people who haven't gotten in trouble with the law. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges for us, and that's why when you look across the country and you look at campaigns to stop these deportation programs, most of them say, we want people who are actually, who are driving without a license or actually were innocent in the first place of these crimes to stay here. Everybody else, you just might have to go, right? So I think it's also a movement problem for us.
Yeah, I have a question raised by what these ladies just shared with us. And my question is directed at whoever in this room has an affiliation with the legal community. All too often, constitutional rights are violated while other officers are standing around observing. And when even with our cop watch, we're supposed to be the beginning of a progressive anti-police brutality movement, but even in our training sessions, we're trained to focus on the perpetrator. It's only through extra-legal research that I come upon Title 18, Section 1983, that says that the cop that observes is just as culpable as the cop that's perpetrating. And I'm wondering why our progressive legal community hasn't put pressure on these observing police to break the blue wall of silence and let them know you're culpable too if you don't tell on your offending partner. And I wonder, why isn't that being done?
Does anybody want to speak to that? That's a tall order. It's all kinds of pride.
I've been speaking a lot, but I will say, one of the things that we do is that we actually go into Rikers twice a month, and we to the different facilities, and we do a total of 8 bilingual English and Spanish Know Your Rights workshops, right? And it's actually DOC who let us into Rikers. And the reason that they let us into Rikers was because one of our staffers had actually filed a 1983 action against Rikers, and because they were detaining somebody illegally. And I think that actually scared the pants out of Rikers in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It made them say, okay, we'll try to comply in some way because we don't want to be the subject of these lawsuits anymore. And so I think I actually think more people should be doing these kinds of actions. I think in the immigration context, sometimes it's
We should make it
especially,
happen. We should make it happen.
let's make it happen. But oftentimes it's actually hard because you have immigrants who, who pass through the criminal justice system really quickly, and then they're out the door, not only out of Rikers, but they're out of the country, right? But I do think that it has been an effective tactic, legally speaking, and I think there are more people across the country who are trying to look into that.
I would say,
But also- No, go ahead.
I would just say two things, try to be very, very quick about this, is that we need more of a progressive legal community. Law is about, fundamentally, in my view, like, lawyers are, the whole kind of legal system that law school is set up, so you go to law school to go into the corporate law, to go into the business law.
Exactly.
You're not going there to go, you're accumulating massive debt. You're not going there to go into the progressive legal community. And the people that do go into the progressive legal community, all too often get spread very thin. And so they might want to do more on what you're talking about, but they're already taking on both their day job and their. Now, the other thing I was going to say is, as far as the Section 83 lawsuits, as far as prison, with some of what Michelle was talking about, one little thing that the CCR and the lawyers go do is we publish something called the Jailhouse Lawyers Handbook. And it's a free resource kit that we send to any prisoner who requests it. So if you send a letter, or especially it's mainly for people who are already incarcerated who request it, because they are the kind of the priority, but they can request the Jailhouse Lawyers Handbook, and we will send it to them within 6 to 8 weeks, hopefully. I wish it could be faster, but there's a lot of demand for it. And it gives a very kind of basic introduction to the legal system and shows how people can kind of file their own Section 1983 lawsuits within prison for violations of their constitutional rights. And the reaction from folks who have been in prison, incarcerated, who have used the handbook is very positive, that to varying degrees it's been a really good resource. So if folks want to request that, they're totally able to.
Mary.
I have a question for you, son. You said earlier in your talk that efforts to get this Community Safety Act passed, that it's going to take a very long time. So I guess that means there aren't that many people who signed on to it in the City Council?
Actually, that's not true. But
okay.
I think that what I meant to say is, that it's very possible that it could take a long time. It's actually the efforts to move the Community Safety Act are actually happening faster than the original plan.
Okay.
So I don't have the exact numbers, but I think we're at majority for each of the bills, or close to it.
That's great.
And we are, the advocacy day on the 27th is about pushing for it. So, but CPR is also going to be introducing state legislation relatively soon. And so I think, my broader comment is, as we work to make policy reform happen, we actually have to have strategies and tactics that are on around that.
But it seems like a key part of it, you want to prevent people from getting anywhere near ICE, right? So you want to give them the strategies and tools to prevent themselves from getting arrested at all, right? So to de-escalate things and not get caught up in the criminal justice system, because then once they get into the criminal justice system, then they're at the mercy of the immigration system.
Right. I think that it's important, and we always do say, part of what we're doing is trying to give people some tools, right, and help them practice it a little bit.
Right.
But those tools are by far inadequate for the kinds of things that people deal with on a daily basis, and the kinds of things, and are actually not what's going to help us bring about change. I think the one comment I wanted to make about the question of the, going after the perpetrator cop versus the observing cop is that it's important to realize also that there's actually an entire system, and there is a policing theory, and there's a broken windows policing. There's a computer system. There are orders from higher up coming down that are all combining together to pressure both the perpetrating cop and the observing cop. So it's not really about who's more culpable, which of those two individuals is more culpable, but really that, that there's basically an entire system that needs to be transformed.
Jerry, you were patiently with your hand up, and then we'll come back over you.
About the Community Safety Act, is there a, doesn't matter very much about the committee structure, I should know this, but I don't. The committee structure in City Council. Can committee chairs bottle these things up and prevent them from coming to the floor? How does all that work?
That's why we will turn that over to the whole. That's why we need as much support from different members as possible to secure us. So not only members of the Progressive Caucus, the members of the Black, Latino, Asian, I'm missing one word, caucus, but also members of the Public Safety Committee, which have traditionally been quite conservative. Some of them are living in this neighborhood, I don't know how many of you are represented by Peter Vallone, but everybody here. So Peter Vallone needs to hear from you from tomorrow, from tonight, that he needs to support the Community Safety Act, and he has enormous influence. And he should feel from members like you, his constituents, that he and other city council members need to sign on. The idea is we want to get so many city council members out of the 50-odd, 51 I believe, city council members to sign on that they could even override a mayoral veto of this act. So we are now approximately actually the act is comprised of 4 different bills. Each of them get at different pieces of the puzzle, as Yulsan spoke to earlier. And each of those bills has a different number of people that have signed on to it, but averaging around 28 or so per bill. We need to go over 30, and then we need to keep going until we know that we can pass. So really, I'm urging all of you not only to come out on September 27th at 11:30 a.m. for a rally, but for those of you that did sign on that piece of paper that came on earlier, I'll be following up with you to talk to you if you'd be interested in actually, if you're able to take off work, if your immigration status allows you to, if you're able to go into a building and